Alright, quick introduction. It's going to be a video of a side-by-side teardown of a Shimano Metanium DC. This is the current model DC. One step down from the Antares. Purchased, I think this is its second winter, so it's seen quite a bit of use. Both of them have. And this is the new current Daiwa Steez SV T-Wing. Purchased in the spring of this past year, so spring 2016. So all these reels have seen quite a bit of use. And for starters, none of these reels had any issues at all whatsoever. Some blemishes here and there. So what I'm going to be doing is, these are the reels that I'm going to set to the side. And these are going to be the two reels that are going to get dissected. Now I'm not going to tear them all the way down to the frame, because anybody who's ever been inside of a bait caster can tell you that a lot of it's redundant. You know, you have your frame and you have your useless parts that don't need to be taken out of the reel for the purpose of shooting a comparison video. This isn't a how-to. So we're going to have the Shimano on the left and the Daiwa on the right. Both side plates come off with a flip of a switch. No coins needed, no screws to take out. Alright, so we will compare the handles. So you may notice, side by side, that the Daiwa appears shorter. Let's get on in there. Alright, so first off, you'll notice that the Daiwa reels use almost like a piloted flathead. So you need to be very careful with these screws, because if you don't like seeing rash, you will chew them up very easily. Do not use a Phillips or a posi drive on them. This is a 10mm wrench. I'm not a fan of those fancy, brightly colored aluminum wrenches you can buy off of like Hedgehog or something like that. I don't see the need. I mean, I'm about as into working on reels as can be considered healthy, and I never bothered going in that far. But if it tickles your fancy, I ain't gonna stop you. Shimano, real simple. Phillips or flathead. When it comes to these these handle screws that cover the beauty plates, I always try my best not to mangle that screw, because we all know what happens. You get that little burr on the edge of the screw and your knuckle hits it and it's like, so I like to curse at other things on the water, not things that I've done when I damage my reels. Alright, so let's break out the calipers. Not to be confused with break the calipers. Alright, so right off the bat we'll measure that's the Shimano nut, 10 mil, and the Daiwa, which is configured a little differently. Still the same size, but if you notice, it's different. If you look here, in order to save a significant amount of weight, the stud that you attach the handle to, Daiwa's gone the route of using a hollowed out, and as you see when we get in, it's going to have weight saving cutouts, so it's going to be almost perforated throughout its length. Nice little idea. What it also prevents, which is something that Daiwa reels and Shimano reels always had issues with, including Abu, even the old style Abus, is you put that nut on and it's just off a thread. And when you tighten that sucker down, what you end up with is when you start cranking, it pops off that thread, shears that thread, now your handle's wobbly. And there's no way to fix it without replacing either the nut or that stud. No bueno. Not the end of the world, but nice touch by Daiwa. Now, in a saltwater reel, do I want that? All that load, if you're not cranking evenly, it's going right on top up there. So there's a lot of shearing force that's going to come out from the length of that handle. I can see that failing on a heavy application. But on a smaller freshwater reel, these reels aren't going to see that much abuse. It's bass fishing. £10 bass don't pull that hard, no matter what you're trying to pull them out of. Alright, so you have your Daiwa and your Shimano. The Daiwa is in fact shorter than the Shimano. First off, let's get the diameter of this real quick. 5.31. Subtract half from either side, so subtract 1. So we have 88 millimeters. I'm going to say 4 3/4 for that rivet. Let's say 5. Let me shoot me over it. $85. And we'll subtract 1. So 84. Oh, my math is awful on that one. Both of them were off. Let's just get it rough. I don't want to do math. I'm tired. I'm going to say that's 80. Now that's out of the way. It's been a long day. It's snowing out. Don't judge me for my math. The struggle is real. So, right off the bat, when you start getting inside the reel, you have your spool control, your spool tension. No clicking on either, which, honestly, who cares? It's not needed. Daiwa's is recessed, so it makes it a little bit trickier. Theirs is more of a set and forget, which honestly every reel on the planet should be set and forget after you've been using a bait casting reel for, you know, a short amount of time. Once you get the hang of it, the whole spool tension is useless. I mean, if you're not loosening up the spool tension to the point where there's a little side-to-side wiggle, and then just making sure that there's you don't want any resistance from the spool tension up. That's what the brakes are for. That's what your brakes and your thumbs are for. So I like how Daiwa did this. It's kind of forcing you away from using it as a massively limiting crutch. And you also don't need a bearing to support that shaft, which is also something else that's going to add friction. Well, let's take a look. Nothing otherworldly. Same spool tensioner that you've seen on pretty much any Daiwa reel in the past. Same idea. Now, how about the construction and what's holding these together? Straight away, you see, Daiwa went with 3 screws. Shimano, you can't see from this angle. Definitely got to flip it upside down. 1, 2, 3. Same, but I'll give Shimano style points on this one. They did a much better job hiding them. Cosmetically, it's slick as shit. It really is. And this style's been out for a while, but I kind of hoped, you know, Daiwa could have done that, but they opted not to. Now this. Why Shimano opted to use a wave spring, where it has no effect on anything besides keeping the drag star centered in between a gap, I will never know. This is what Shimano is using in their spinning reels to essentially make a drag that's capable of higher max drag and easier or more linearity with more range. It works in that application. It definitely does. The Stellas are amazing. Then you have your Bellevilles. Daiwa went about it a little bit differently, which you'll see here. So you have the tensioning nut that compresses the Bellevilles, which then basically forces down on the stack. That gives you your friction. But the Belvilles are contained in this little clicker cup. You sit on the top side of it, usually in the back-to-back parentheses approach, just to get a little bit wider range. If you stack them up like that, you know, kind of lose your range, but it'll get tighter quicker. But if they're either like that or like that, love you, sorry, never happened again. But if they're like that, they kind of compress easier and then get to that same max drag position when they're flat against each other and you're just cranking down directly, which most bass guys are, myself included. See much difference? Not really. So, let's get this sucker apart. So you have the 3 screws. I may end up getting a special tool from Dyer, or a special tool in general, just to get these out cleaner. Not doing that bad of an idea considering I'm staring through a viewfinder trying to do this. And the Daiwa screws are all equal sized and equal. Just leave it at that. They're all the same size. And the Shimano, I'm going to go with a, what is this, a 00 posi drive? It works. 00. Posi drives are incredible. Size 0, 0, 0, and 1. For whatever reason, they grip screws on fishing reels better than anything else out there. This ain't my first rodeo, so if you want a better tool for the job, if you're just getting into servicing your own reels, or even if you've been doing it for a while but have been just using your standard run-of-the-mill screwdrivers, you can't beat them. I think I worked on 150 reels this year. Now, straight away, to answer your questions and what you're thinking, different gear ratios. Shimano's not overly built for, you know, a 6-ounce reel. It's not a tank. It's not, you know, on steroids. It's just a faster retrieve reel. What you'll see here, it's a little white piece of plastic. That keeps the ka-chunk of the thumb bar in check. And what you can see here on the Shimano, a little tricky since it's black, kind of blends in a little bit. Right here, that does the same thing. Now, with that cleaned off, you can see that there is occasional contact. You can see how there's like almost like a grain or a slicker spot on there. That will wear. I mean, this is going on a couple thousand hours, tens of thousands of casts. That's a lot of ka-chunk-ka-chunking. It hasn't worn through yet. If you keep it lubricated, it'll probably be fine. If you're the kind of guy that buys bait casters and keeps them for 10 years, you'll start wearing through that finish. Especially if you fish regularly. And if you don't maintain your stuff, you get some water in there, some deposits make their way there, it'll wear even quicker. Or if this area gets a little bit, deposits and contamination get on there, who knows. Definitely dig that better on the Daiwa. It's not a deal breaker. I want to go to a tackle shop. Does so-and-so have a plastic support for their thumb bar? Because 75,000 casts later, I want to make sure it's not wearing through the finish. This is harder than it looks when you're looking and doing it through a viewfinder. Alright, I'm going to keep that there. I'm not going to take that off because I kind of want to hide the surprise. Cool. Alright, now. Make sure it's lit up well. Don't judge me. I was using my SLR, but it only recorded 20-minute clips, and it wouldn't let me know it was shutting off after the end of 20 minutes. And on top of that, every time it would focus, you'd hear the servo was going. Yeah, you don't need to hear robot sounds when you're watching a boring fishing reel video. Alright, let's get this off. There's a little more going on with the Daiwa. Not much, but you're going to see a little bit more white than what you're probably used to seeing. Now that they're oriented the same, what you're going to see is right here. That little white tab that comes from over here. That's relatively new. And what that does, and I'm hoping this is going to show up well, when you engage the thumb bar, and it's a fairly secure thumb bar, I'm not going to lose any springs by doing this. I'm going to be careful about it, but I'm not going to lose anything. But if you see the T-wing, which is the level wind guide, no longer do you have that silly trapdoor that they came out with a few years ago. It worked. I didn't buy into that. It may have proven to be reliable. I'm not believing all the grooving theories and the grooving issues that people had. Some people may have, I don't know. But this new design, perfect. That piece of plastic, which is essentially self-lubricating, will never bind. It's incorporated directly into the thumb bar, so you're not feeling any added resistance to the good old ka-chunk-ka-chunk. Daiwa and Shimano do the thumb bars better than anybody else. Sorry, Abu. You've had some problematic models and versions in the past. Fluger, yeah, whatever. I don't think so. Well done. And for all the haters out there that say, oh, it doesn't make a difference, please. Whether it's a non-disengaging level wind, a disengaging level wind, or any form of automatic line leveling, it adds friction. Because when you cast, the line is not always coming off of the same side of the spool that the level wind is. So when you come across like this sharp angle, now mind you, the newer Shimano's, from that distance from center to the level wind, has been pushed forward a little bit. They've basically, what they're trying to do is not make it a such sharp angle to come across like this. So the line's coming off of this side of the spool, and it's got to go all the way to this side. It's going to grab against its neighbor. It's going to push. It's got to shove its neighbor out of the way. See how it wants to stick when I come off to the side? What this silly little design does is, you now have that much less of an angle. It's going to come off of this side, come off of this side here. It only has to go to here. Much less resistance. If you look at the people that really cast for distance, and I have a few distance casting setups and a couple friends, and it ain't easy to cast over 150 to 200 yards. That's not easy. If you do that with a reel with a level wind, hey, I'll pay you for lessons. How's that? Moving on. Oh, and just in short, I'd like the T-wing. I buy into that. It's not a gimmick. Now this is what I like about the Shimano compared to the Daiwa. These two studs here, they're metal. These two from Daiwa, let's scratch it, are metal. Okay, I was wrong. I thought that was plastic. I take that back. It looked like plastic, felt like plastic. Usually when you have a metal part, kind of gets cool to the touch when it's sitting out in the open like this. Has the sound of metal. This doesn't sound like metal, but it is, so whatever. You live and you learn. I'll be the first one to admit, I was a Shimano guy for a long time. Bait casters. I kind of moved on from the Daiwas of the TDXs and TDZs and, you know, all those kind of reels from back in the day, and they were great. I wanted something else. That took me away from Daiwa, and it took me a while to get back. So now I'm back on board after going with some Shimano and some Abu and some other stuff. Figured once I saw a 5.5 ounce reel with the T-wing, didn't matter if it was a Steez or a Zillion or whatever it was, I'm jumping on it. I mean, is there really that much of a difference? Now this is what I found interesting. You have the ported stud here. Awesome. Assuming it's duraluminum, some form of aluminum. Or duraluminium or aluminium, whatever you want to call it. That's in there solid. And there is zero in and out play, and just the slightest back and forth without really wrenching on it. This definitely has some weeble wobble to it. I'm not trying to over exaggerate it. And there's the slightest bit of in and out. Slight. I mean, it's not shimmed in properly. I don't lose any shims. I mean, it's very, very slight in and out. Could be just traveling on the races of the bearings. I don't know. But that's always the case with all Shimano's, all the way up to their giant Tranks and their Trinidads and their Talicas. This is solid. So yeah. Is there really anything special about these two reels? I mean, they're put together solidly. Their tolerances are great. Gear quality, gear cut, gear material. Gear material in baitcasters is almost universal across the board. I mean, everybody's going to an aluminum type gear, duralumin type gear. Spinning reels, especially in the saltwater game, that's where you really got to start paying attention to gear quality and gear material. Freshwater guys, all the, if you read on Tackle Tour and all the other websites, oh, aluminum gear suck, brass is better, blah blah blah. They're gonna wear the same. I mean, these fish don't pull that hard. You're not gonna strip out gear teeth on bass. It's possible. It's just not probable. It doesn't happen often. Even guys that fish 250 days out of the year legitimately. They're going to see more signs of wear because all these, they're fishing reels. NASA didn't make them. Alright, so, look. This little cancer-causing drag disc, Metanium, from Shimano. It's a nice gear material. Is it the best? No. And when it does get worn, they will get brittle. I mean, I've taken apart reels where there was just a small chunk left, and everything else had pretty much